Welcome to another episode of TERF Talk Down Under. I'm Stassja and this is Ange. G'day, Ange.
Hi, Stass. How you going?
All right. Kind of sick of it all this week.
Yeah, a bit overwhelming how much bad news is coming in about the institutional capture of all these agencies like VicPol, the NHS in the UK and other places and here, and the length and breadth that Dan Andrews seemed to go to indoctrinate our kids. It's a bit disheartening, but, there is also a bit of a resistance brewing, I hope. I've been a bit distracted by the flooding in my region at the moment. I actually drove through some floodwaters last night, which was a bit weird. And I've been chasing my insurer about the bottom end of my driveway floating off down the street. So,
yeah. It's been full on all over different parts of Victoria, hasn't it? Yeah.
It has.
Okay. Well, in good news, let's start with some good news. I thought that the NHS draft guidelines for treating gender dysphoria that have come out of the UK advising against social transition. So no to the pronouns. This is amazing. This is huge.
It is. After all the shit because they've been in, or the entire, British hospital system, with all the complaints that they've received from women, that made no difference. But the Cass report into the Tavistock seems to have made all the difference.
Yeah. And, I've emailed the Child Safety Commissioner here in Victoria 3 times about the Royal Children's Hospital and comparing it to the UK developments. And I ended up just putting the pressure on her via Twitter, and I finally got a response.
Good.
Saying, "Oh, sorry, we missed your email." So I am aiming for a face-to-face meeting. So we'll see what happens there. But there have been some amazing face-to-face meetings happen this week up in Canberra. There's been some Australian mothers, I believe. I know 2 of them who have gone along and spoken to about 9 politicians up in Canberra. And I haven't spoken to them directly yet, but what they're saying is that it's had a huge impact. These politicians now understand the damage of the gender affirmation model, which is great.
And they would understand too that this is a social contagion that they're promoting in our education system. And the majority of parents and teachers are deeply concerned about it and being ignored to this point. Yep.
So that's really good. There was a little Speakers Corner event up in Sydney. Well done to everyone who showed up. So that's slowly growing. If you would like to get in touch with the organisers, feel free to email us at terftalkdownunder@gmail.com. We will gladly pass on the message. That's kind of a service that we offer for free. I've had 2 women this week contact me with workplace issues.
Oh, yeah. I've got 2 in my inbox too. Yeah.
So I've connected them with women that can help. I think you were in touch with a trans widow last week asking for help.
A trans widow and a woman who works in the public service. We're getting so many people who had no idea what was going on getting in touch with us now because it's impacted them in the workplace.
Yeah. Speaking of workplaces, ACON's workplace indoctrination program called Pride in Diversity has also been in the news. So there was a little bit of follow-up since the Media Watch expose, which is good. The Daily Mail did an excellent piece calling out the Qantas CEO, Alan Joyce,
Ooh.
for being a patron of ACON.
Oh.
But they really focused on the removal of the terms mother, father, and gendered language in workplace policies. But, you know, they went on to name a number of major corporates that are signed up to the scheme. So they did quite a good job. On the other hand, news.com.au, you may remember Samantha Handmaiden works for them.
Yeah.
We did all the hit pieces on Kath Deves in the lead up to the election. They did a really biased article. They only platformed ABC journalists who had gone on Twitter and said, there's no problem with us working with ACON, and The Guardian did pretty much the same thing. So that was pretty pathetic.
Well, interestingly, myself and a few other citizen journalist TERFs found a big long list of ABC employees who are also employees on the payroll of ACON.
Well,
so if that's not a conflict of interest, what is?
I don't know that we can prove that they're on the payroll, but they may have just done pro bono stuff for ACON. It's hard to tell, but one that I found was Sally Rugg. So was she the founder of change.org?
Yes. Yeah.
So she won an ACON award like back in 2017 or something. And of course she's on Twitter saying, oh, there's no problem with the ABC in bed with ACON.
And see, these people, even if they did do pro bono work, the ABC would still be paying them to go to ACON and do the work. There wouldn't be, you know, these people aren't going to dedicate their time and effort week after week to promote something that they're not getting paid for. So even if they're not paid directly by ACON, which I think ACON would be paying them in some way, if ACON's donating to the ABC, or, you know, if ACON's receiving donations or donating to the ABC, and the ABC is paying for them to attend these ACON functions and speak, then that's still, they're being paid indirectly by ACON. It's still a conflict of interest, particularly when these journalists appear in the media based on the integrity of them working for the national broadcaster, and then they're using the opinions of an outside lobby group, which is ACON, and spreading that misinformation as if it is fact. That's where the problem lies.
Definitely a conflict of interest, absolutely.
Yeah. And going back to what we were saying about workplaces, a friend of mine just sent me some photo this morning of the toilets at the Australian Education Union, and I'll read out what it says on the sign. But it was on both the men's and the ladies' toilets. And it says, gender diversity is welcome here. Please use the restroom that best fits with your gender identity or expression. And underneath was the AEU stamp, right? Now, not long ago, it was up to the unions to advocate on the behalf of women to have single-sex toilets in the workplace. It was a human right for, say, if you were working in a mechanics and there were 10 male employees and you were a female employee, the union would advocate for you to have your own toilets. Most employers, particularly small businesses, will allocate male and female toilets if they're available for goodwill and the comfort of their employees. But, you know, it used to be a requirement that there had to be, you know, male and female toilets. Now, if you've got a problem with a man in your toilets in your workplace and he identifies as a woman, no matter how much he looks like a man, and you go to your union to represent you in like a sexual harassment or a workplace claim against your employer that you've been made to feel uncomfortable, your union will no longer defend you, because they are signed up to Pride and Diversity or ACON or whatever else, one of these pride schemes as well. So it's not only the employers, it's the unions, and it's all the representative bodies that are meant to protect them. It's the Human Rights Tribunal, for God's sake. Mm-hmm. It's all of these administrative bodies.
Yeah. Well, speaking of unions, our viewers may remember we had on Bronwyn Winter to talk about the queer unionists in tertiary education, which is a caucus of the National Tertiary Education Union, which is for essentially university employees. And well, the convener of the queer caucus is a trans-identified male who calls himself Amy Sargent. And this footage got leaked via Kit Kowalski of him speaking to the audience at, there were these LGBTQIA plus awards called Out for Australia. And he's up there receiving some award, I think. And he just blatantly lied to the audience. He started talking about trans genocide. Now, a reminder for everyone, I think off the top of my head, there's been 4 murders of trans people in Australia since 2008. So there is absolutely no trans genocide taking place in this country. And then he says, let me find the quote. He says that at the recent University of Melbourne event that explored ACON's influence on public institutions, he reckons that a panelist said that they want to create a world without trans and gender diverse people. So this is an absolute lie. I am so sick of the TQ plus lying to trans people that there's this section of society that wants them dead. Okay, maybe that exists on the far, far right, but it doesn't exist anywhere else in society. It's insane. And I sent all that to John Fain, who moderated the event, and he got back to me within half an hour and he was like, that absolutely was not said. And if it had been said, well, John would have very quickly intervened. So this piece of shit, Amy Sargent, fucking hell, take this award off him.
And very influential piece of shit too, unfortunately. You know, these people that have, like, I don't know how they get into these positions of power within the Greens and places like that. I just don't understand it, because they're proving time and time again they're not, you know, people that can be trusted to speak the truth about anything at all.
Yeah.
I mean, they lie about the sex they are, for God's sake. Just look at them and it's a lie. And yet they'll lie about anything else. And yet they wiggle their way into the unions. They wiggle their way into the Greens. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of jerks, the Liberty Victoria Award.
Yeah, so that's coming up, an awards night where they're going to be awarding Brenda Appleton, who's a man, an award for his work through Transgender Victoria, and part of that work was towards getting violent men to be housed in women's prisons. Yeah, so that's coming up.
A human rights award.
Yeah,
for putting male sex offenders in female prisons.
Yeah,
and that's coming up in a few weeks, and I would personally like to picket it.
Yeah,
even by myself.
Yeah.
So if anyone would like to join me, send us an email. Quietly stand up the street with our signs, because it's just insane.
Yeah. There was after the Media Watch episode, it was like 6 days later or something, the Australian did do an article on it, which was very much in our favour. It was funny in a way, because apparently there was an extraordinary meeting for the ABC Pride Network the very next day for them to air their grievances against Media Watch. The other very interesting thing I thought in that article was Paul Barry saying, and I quote, that he wasn't saying that the critics are right and the ABC should be supporting them, the critics. Our point is that there's a debate going on. So it's again this stance of, oh, I'm not gender critical, but
yeah. When you think of the ABC, you know, queer staffers, do you have the same visual images you do when you think of like the Twitter and Facebook admins? Like, I just think that they're all the same person, the coloured hair, you know, the glasses, the, you know, poor attempts at androgyny. Man.
Yeah, absolutely. And last one on Acon, well done to Edie Wyatt. She did an excellent article for The Spectator. It explored Acon, institutional capture, and the ABC. But then she went on and described a real life consequence of workplaces adopting this bullshit. And it was a gay man who had been doxxed to his and reported to his employer because he's not interested in sleeping with females who identify as men. So this is now homophobia in the workplace, thanks to Acon policies.
Yeah, I know that man, and he's a good man, and he didn't say anything online that was, you know, that controversial unless you're a militant trans activist. So,
and I think it said that it took 2 years or something like that.
Not sure, but I know it was. They do what they do to all of us, and they go back through your tweets.
Yeah. And
they, you know, get snippets of information, especially if they're in a thread, they take them out of context and then present them as evidence of transphobia. Yeah, there's another person that contacted us this week where someone from her workplace had taken snippets from her Facebook, and all she did was share other people's stories and reported it to her workplace, and she's been called in for a meeting. So
I've got another woman who's been asked to work one-on-one with a trans-identified male because this male has specifically asked for a female practitioner, and she doesn't want to do it. You know,
what area is she in?
I don't want to say because it might reveal who she is, and but you know, she's now in the position of getting legal advice on how to say no. And you know, for me it would be akin to sexual harassment to be forced to work with an obvious autogynephile.
Yep.
And I think, you know, that was really well demonstrated this week in a half-hour documentary put together by YouTuber Skirt Go Spinny. I'm going to link to this one in the description because everyone has to watch it, and it's just the most amazing peak trans material. And it's called "What is a Woman? Wrong Answers Only." The content is the filmmaker, oh my God, she must have watched hours of autogynephilic men on TikTok to pull all this together. I'm so grateful to her for doing it because, you know, after 13 minutes, I had to pause and go and take a break because I was overwhelmed by the ickiness of it all. Oh my God.
It's a like, you know, all of a sudden, like the sexual fetish has suddenly ceased to exist. You know, they can't honestly expect us to believe that everyone who says that they're trans is not an AGP.
Yeah.
You know, the concept of autogynephilia has existed as long as porn has existed.
Wow.
And it's getting worse.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I don't know how you can watch that and still be in support of these men. I just don't get it. And speaking of these men, congratulations to Dean Danny Laidley for making it onto Maxim Australia, and pretty much a soft porn men's magazine here in Australia. They run the Hot 100 most successful and beautiful women in, I believe, Australian media and entertainment and that sort of thing. And Danny Laidley, made it onto number 100.
100. And I shared that article without comment, and Danny had a tantrum. So, and went on a reporting spree, and my Twitter's still there for the moment, touch wood. So, yeah, I shared it without comment.
I've pondered this a little bit, not hugely, but I can't help but wonder if the staff at Maxim Australia did it as a joke.
I think they do it for clickbait. And whether they do it with their tongue in their cheek or whether they do it in seriousness, I think they do it because if their top 100 doesn't get any attention for any other reason, it's going to get it because they've included a trans woman.
Possibly. All right. Well, our guest has arrived, so I'm going to bring her in. There you are, Sabina. Can you? We can see your picture, but we can't hear your audio. So, I will just send you a prompt asking you to unmute. Okay, well, hello.
Hello.
Well,
a different face. Look at that. It's emerging.
Thanks for joining us. So if you could just introduce yourself and give us a bit of background. You're in rural New Zealand?
Yeah, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity to have a bit of a rant. Right, a bit about me. Yeah, in a little rural village. I'm in my 70s now. I don't know, what else do you want to know? I've wanted to talk about what it was like when I first came out and compare it to nowadays with how it is for maybe, I won't know, but it sounds to me like there's a lot of things that are similar that are going on.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, tell us. What was it like for you?
Well, I came out in the very early 70s and I was in the Navy at the time. And I was deep in the closet because it was illegal, even though it wasn't illegal in the law. The military have their own law. And it's a really interesting thing, that thing of being in the closet. And the only ones I've come across who feel that deep down are a woman who came out as lesbians and involved in institutions like nurses, teachers, and they had that same sort of feeling of being in the closet. And I've spoken to a few about my age now, and the one thing they say, I'm not going back into the closet. And it goes very deep. It's not very good for you. And I can see how it's very similar now for young ones who maybe the girls at school who are not getting caught up in the whole trans juggernaut there. They are finding ways of avoiding it, and they're going to have to be closet about maybe thinking of themselves as a lesbian, because they're the ones that are getting trans. And they're probably the ones that aren't needing a large social group around them, because I was a loner as a child, and so there was no group thing that was going to capture me. And they will find ways of hiding, and they are already, but it comes at a cost when you're in the closet, and you have to deal with it years later. And it's interesting because I think a lot of that stuff will be coming up for them. It's very similar. But it's the thing that I find that's really different now, like being in the closet, even though we were deep in the closet, we seem to have ways of having fun and having a good time. And we weren't political at all, and no feminists around in the scene that I was in. And we used to say things like, there was a friend of mine and we used to just say, oh, look, the whole world thinks we're perverted and sick, so we might as well just have a good time and get on with it. We didn't have any politics of thinking, oh, we have to change the world. We were just trying to survive. Yeah. And the gay liberation started about 1972, but they were a world away. They were in a different social scene, probably more middle class and definitely white, most of them, and not all of them, of course. And in the Navy, we were working class and Māori, so it was very, very different. What else? I've got notes here.
Good. So, I think what you're saying is absolutely right about it's now set up that lesbians either have to remain in the closet, or young lesbians, or they have to identify as non-binary or something else other than lesbian woman. Yeah, absolutely. I just heard, I just watched the YouTube last night where a teacher has spoken out anonymously about what's happening in UK schools. And she was talking about, they have these gay straight alliance clubs at schools now. It was something similar to that. And they go around the room and everyone says their pronouns. But there'll be a few kids in the group whose pronouns match their biological sex, and the teacher was saying these kids are hesitating before they say their pronouns, like they're embarrassed to not be non-binary. That's crazy. Anyway,
it's conversion. Definitely conversion. Yeah But it's really interesting how similar it is now to back then, and what it does being in the closet is you get paranoid, you get fearful, and that distorts a lot of your growing and how you see yourself. And that, as I said, comes at a cost later on in life. And I'm in my 70s now. And there's days I have a bad day and I think, oh no, can't deal with anything today. Not going to go out there and be the stroppy one. And I was always so in awe when I started to see the feminists. There was a big wave of them come out as lesbians in the mid 70s on. And when I met up with them in the late 70s, it was like they come flying out with their arms up in the air and hallelujah, I'm a lesbian. And I think, oh, isn't that amazing that they can do that? And it took a long time to actually feel that way, which is why the word lesbian now is so important to me, because we did not use it. That was the no-no. It was worse if you got called a dyke, especially a bull dyke, but only the big girls got called that because little runty ones like me wouldn't make that grade. And it's a long process. And then when I met the feminists, it was like there was this, it was weird actually, because it was sort of like the coming out was more valid, coming out politically than coming out sexually like me and my crowd did, which is really weird. It gets into that whole thing. But I think that had a lot to do with the class thing as well. But the first lesbian club in New Zealand was set up by two Māori working class women, not political, but it was in 1971, and that was a big change because it meant we had somewhere to go. And then the others from the university and the middle class lesbians would go to it as well, but it was predominant. I'd say it was more working class and definitely Māori in the early days. And there's no way I'm going to romanticize that time, because there's times it was horrible. And, there would be drugs, alcohol, fights, got your heart broken. It was all the stuff that was going on. But somehow there was a resilience there that we had. And I think a lot of it had to do with humor. We made fun of stuff. And I don't see that as much now. It's too serious, everything. There's when you're at the bottom, I see this with other groups, when you're at the bottom, humor's is the only thing you have left to fight back with, and it can be awful, but it's sort of a release of the tension and everything that's going on. So that was the main thing about the whole I have to refer to my notes now. The whole class thing is that That was another reason why I wanted to come on your show, is that there'll be a lot of women and lesbians out there, maybe, who see your show, who don't see themselves as feminists and who don't see themselves as political women, but they know the difference between right and wrong, and they've been battling in their own way to fight for women's rights in a different way. And I just sort of want to say, you don't have to call yourself anything. You just do it. You just get out there, find some others, and stick to the truth, stick to saying no and rejecting everything. And I've battled for years. Am I a feminist? Am I not? In public, yes, always stand by the sisters. But in other times, I think I'm not sure. So I don't think it matters anymore. And I think, yeah, I'm going to be counted with everybody else when it matters.
I feel like the gender critical movement has like just opened the bandwidth for so many women to get involved, whether they identify as feminists or not. Like everyone's coming together to stand up to this nonsense, and I think that's really positive.
I think so too.
We can thank the trans activists for that.
Yeah, and also restoring the word woman, because it felt to me like that was lost in the public a lot, where you only heard girls or ladies, which is weird, but they've restored the word woman for us. I think it was not used a lot and sort of went out of use, and that's come back in. And I don't want to thank them for anything, but maybe that's one thing.
I'm glad you mentioned the class issue too, because in my experience, it was working class left-wing women who ran the domestic violence resources, that ran the LGB support groups. They were always left-wing working class women doing the grassroots political stuff. And it's funny that the women that are supposed to represent the left now are all upper middle class women who aren't going to be impacted directly by having men in their female only spaces.
I agree. The thing too with the whole thing with that thing about class is really interesting, because I think it's been shoved underground. Now we have this whole gender movement that's talking about sex and gender and race. Where's the class? And it's still there.
Yeah.
And I know the whole ideology's moved on from a material thing to abstract thing, and it's what I call the fluffle. It's a mix of fluff and waffle, and the middle class do really well at that. I do too. I like fluffle. It's the waffle sort of subjects are easy, but they don't mean anything, and you can just go around and Scott's mist and not get anywhere. And it's no accident. I read in some stuff that Andrew Doyle had written that it's no accident that the middle class have taken that on. So we're the working class though.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you mentioned about those early groups, and I think it's the same in New Zealand, that they were left. I used to think of myself as socialist after I got out of the Navy, of course. But I used to think of myself as socialist and even an anarchist, because I didn't believe in central government and everything.
Same.
And I look at the anarchists now, the anti-far, I call them anti-farts, because they're just smelly and unpleasant. But I look at that now and I think, I don't want to be like that. And I think, well, where's the working class in the Labor in the Labor government that we had here? And I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but here, Labor has been, the government's been completely taken over by the middle classes. So where the working class has gone, and unfortunately a lot goes sort of more right, because they want to, have a say in certain things and believe in traditions and that. But at least in the UK, they had the decency to call Labor New Labour. Here they never did. They just are travelling through the decades on the laurels of the past, and they don't represent working people anymore. And that kind of thing I find I feel like I've been conned, and
Same.
it's not a nice feeling being conned. But now that I've woken up, that I'm not a socialist. Well, I'm still left. They've just gone so far left, they're off the planet. With the ideology, they've just dropped off the edge. And just because I don't want to vote Labor or support them anymore doesn't make me right wing. And there's nothing wrong with I look at some of the right wing, called right wing people, and they're just conservative. They're not white supremacists, they're not fascist. I haven't met any of those sort of people, but I think it's sort of being aware, well, Labor's gone. As far as I'm concerned, there's no way of saving it. And I find it really hard talking with other lesbians about who to vote for next. Well, not Labor, not Greens, they've sold out as well. And some of one of the worst bills that we've had pushed through have been pushed through by the Greens. So all these things come to a head now from my evolving through my political sort of life. And I think, I'm not going to throw it all down the drain. I still have my values, my working class values. I feel fine about them. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of being the victim and all that. I don't feel that at all. I feel absolutely fine about it. And it's being able to talk about these things that we can move on. And I feel that in the groups now, we're not talking about class. And it's really important that we do that so that we can move on and see what we have that we can share and use, for this struggle.
Well said. Yeah. It's an ongoing debate in gender critical circles about the left-right stuff. It's absolutely a section of left-wing women that will never vote Conservative, cannot bring themselves to vote Conservative, and I think there's a place for that as well in this movement. I think it's really commendable that they're still working in the Greens Party, trying to get policies changed from within. They're still, reaching out to Labor MPs, asking for sit-down meetings. So I think, there are just so many battlefronts in this debate, and I think everyone has their place, even the Christians. Yeah, let them go for it. We'll deal with them afterwards. But I just everybody has their own part to play in it, and if they're fighting against it, you don't have to go to bed with them. You can just let them go for it and see that that they're fighting in another area. But so what else was it about the whole class thing? Well, what's the media like over there? Will we move on to the media? The media is pretty tied up. There's quite a struggle to loosen them up, because the mainstream media is pretty much captured and controlling everything. We're in a really awful situation here. That I used to think that we were quite free here in New Zealand, but I realised that when you're an island or a couple of islands in the middle of the ocean at the bottom of the world, you don't need any borders, because you can't go anywhere. You just can't get out. And everything is tied up now with media, like social media. And I think our leaders going for that. And we've had an amalgamation with the public funded Radio New Zealand with, this has only just gone through, with the TV news channels is 1, 2 and 3. And the amalgamation went through, huge amount of money, millions and millions of dollars. And so now basically, when there's an item that gets released by the government, say, it goes out and it's all the same and there's no dissent. And that's quite a big thing, really, when you think about it. And the other thing that's a bit worrying is that there's other bits of media that get through, not much. There's the odd news on the radio, not much. There's a little bit in the papers, again, not much. There's a new, platform set up
by a guy called Sean Plunkett, and it's a radio show, and he's online, and it's called The Platform, and he will interview anybody, left, right, up, down, whatever. He doesn't care. And I've heard others talk about him as if he's too right wing. Nah, he's a good journalist, and he'll go for asking the truth. And he's been digging into a lot of stuff. He's probably the only outlet that we have that's regular now at the moment.
And is he online or?
He's online, yeah.
Yep.
Just what's it called? The Platform. Sean Plunkett.
Is that on YouTube or?
YouTube, yeah.
Yeah, right,
YouTube,
right.
Yeah.
So can I just clarify? You said you had your publicly funded, was it Radio National?
Yes.
And then they've merged with, have they merged with commercial TV stations?
No. They've merged with New Zealand TV 1, 2 and 3. So there's 3 channels, and they're publicly funded as well.
Oh, right.
So the 2 have come together now.
Yeah. That sounds
3. Channel 1 and 2 apparently, but I thought it was 3 of them. The other thing about that makes it, we get into the sinister thing now with our leader.
Yeah.
She's locking down a lot of stuff. I saw this woman on YouTube having an interview. She was the UN Secretary of Global Communication, and she was very gleefully talking about how they now have quite close links with the World Economic Forum from the UN. And they had a panel discussion at the beginning of October, and it was all about disinformation. And our leader went over there and gave, I don't know if you've seen it, the infamous speech she made in the UN, and it was about social media, hate speech on social media, as she calls it, and that they were words of weapons of war. So she's using a lot of emotive words in her publicly, when she comes out publicly saying anything, and she uses the words like terrorism and white supremacists and things like that. And she was at this panel, I'm pretty certain of it, I think she was there, where the other world leaders were talking about disinformation. But what this woman in the UN actually said that made my ears prick up, they've actually done a deal with Google. And now what they do, when they put out any information, the deal with Google is that their information gets pushed to the front, and they can do that and push the other stuff back. So they're tying up the communication a lot. And I think Jacinda Ardern's going to go for the social media soon.
Wow.
And we have an election next year. She's very out of favour. I don't think she's too worried though. She's just going to go hot skipping and jumping off to the UN, I think, afterwards, and get a job there. But she's very tied into the WEF and the UN and the other links with Trudeau and Macron and ones like that. We've also had a lot of coverage with the again, publicly funded. They've put out some, I have to look to my notes here. It was the other thing that was set up by the government was, they call it the Disinformation Project, which we probably could read the same as the Ministry of Propaganda, really. It's not covered by the OIA, the Official Information Act, so you can't find out anything about it. This guy on the platform's been doing his best to get into there. And it's, I think it sort of sounds like what they're doing in the UK, where they keep a list of names of people on social media, and then they can use that against them in later times. And there's already one woman that's been picked up from an exchange on social media, and she got a notice from the police to say that she would now be given a warning, so that if anything happened in the future, it could come against her. So she actually challenged that and got a lawyer to have that withdrawn, and they have withdrawn it. So they're starting to get into that social media thing now too.
Yeah,
and
I was just watching something about China's social credit system.
Oh yeah.
So and the person being interviewed was saying, my fear is that in Western democracies that people will willingly sign up for this social credit system, whereas in China it's being imposed. What happens if over here people are like, yeah, let's do it? And you can just imagine all those the anarchists that you were talking about earlier. You can imagine them signing up for something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'd have a field day.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So it's a bit worrying about the propaganda that's being done in the country at the moment. I don't know if you heard about the protest at Parliament, where in Wellington. I'm not sure when that was. It was earlier in the year, and that went there for quite a few weeks, and in the end it was removed by the police. And it was a protest against the mandatory of having vaccinations and stuff like that, because people lost their jobs if they weren't vaccinated, and they couldn't get their jobs back afterwards either. And it affected what happened. It seemed to affect a lot of people, left and right. And there were people who ended up at this protest who had never been in protests in their life, and none of the MPs would go out and talk to them, which was a bit weird, because it's supposed to be something that you're allowed to democratically do, is go and protest. And a couple of one MP, ex-MP, one of the he was ex-deputy leader actually. He went in there to talk with the people, and he was given a trespass notice by the Speaker of the House to ban him from Parliament grounds. And another guy who had been in Parliament before, he had the same thing done to him. And the Speaker of the House now has been, I think he's been forced out. But that's the kind of thing that they're doing, and they're just going against what democracy is supposed to be all about. And it's just little things at a time that are being done. And it's there's as I said, disinformation. They've done a very biased documentary movie about that protest, and that's online too. It's called Fire and Fury, and it's a really bad piece of publicly funded documentary again. And it's just all about how the white supremacists, the fascists, and this bias. This is the bias that I'm talking about that's being put out. And then there was another documentary put out about conversion therapy to try. I think they're just trying to they totally ignored that the conversion therapy bill that we have now is the one that's entrapping all the young kids into transing. They only talked about the conversion therapy of the lesbian and gay. And this is how they tie in, the trannies try and jump on the back of what's happening with lesbian and gays. And all of those cases that they show were fringe sort of religious groups who were doing it.
Yeah.
And two actually were from Fiji. So they were religious groups connected to there. So it was a different culture. There was nothing of mainstream people at all, because it hasn't been happening. And that was propaganda too, I think. And there's been a couple of articles that a couple of women have put out here in New Zealand. One was put out last year and by Jan Rivers and Jill Abigail, and that can be, that's online as well, where they talked about, it's called What They Do in the Shadows, and it outlined over the years what our Labor government have sneakily got into policy without public consultation or without anybody knowing. And another one that Jan Rivers put out is it's about how the transgender people are going for special rights and how that's going to affect us, because everybody has rights. Everybody now, probably in Australia too, are covered by human rights acts, and only they want the extra ones.
It sounds
So-
very much like Victoria. Like,
Yeah,
it
I was just going to
sounds
say that.
exactly the same as Victoria, everything that's happening.
Mm. Yeah, it does sound, when I've heard some of the stuff coming out from there, I think you're a little bit ahead of us though. We're a wee bit behind, and I think we're coming in for a tsunami of stuff that's going to happen all at once, and it's just going to take everybody by surprise.
Just the you said Jan Rivers documentary.
Jan Rivers, yeah.
Are they free on YouTube? Do you know?
Well, the easier way to find them is on the Lava website, because they're both on that. Both articles are on that, of Jan Rivers and Jill Abigail.
Okay.
And there's also, I don't know if you've seen that one, there's also another really good one that's on that website too, of Jennifer Billix.
Okay.
She did a lecture, 2-hour lecture, I think it was, and she ties all her information together. That's actually brilliantly done. So it's all these threads that are all coming together, tying us all up.
It's funny. I was following. Sorry, Stass, you want to go?
I was just going to say we need to wrap up soon, so let's make this the last question topic if we can.
Oh, I was on anti-fascists page on Twitter, because I still follow some of them, because they have some interesting things to say, the other day, and he was ripping into one of the sort of more right-leaning groups, advocacy groups that we have here, Binary, and they were getting stuck into them, calling them far right and all this stuff. And I piped up and said, you gave these people this platform because left-wing women were telling you that gender ideology was a problem for years. And you ignored us and you demonized us, and the right saw an opportunity and they took it. So it's, they've created this situation, and by calling, anyone who opposes the lefty doctrine far right, they're creating the far right, because the people they're talking about aren't far right. But if you call them that enough, just like they did with TERFs, they will go, yeah, well, I'm far right. And then, that's what you get. And they did that with TERFs too. They called everybody a TERF, and that was a slur and it was an insult. And they called it us that often that we threw our hands up in the air and said, we're TERFs. What are you going to do about it? So, these people are getting people that are moderate people, labeling them extremists and creating extremists in doing so.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
It ties in with the language that they're twisting around too. They just
and they need an imaginary enemy too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's a good point, because that's that thing of if you get yelled at enough, and after a while we think, oh well, what the hell? Can't do anything about it. So just carry on. And you have to get used to being called names. You have to get used to being called racist. Well, you're not. So what the hell? You just carry on. You're not a white supremacist. You're not any of those things. And you just have to ignore that. We can't let them by name calling, which is weird, because that's one thing I remember from when I was young. We got called names all the time. And then when you hear these sniveling little whingers now get anything said about them, and they're going hysterical and falling apart, and I think, oh, for fuck's sake, get a grip. And it's like you just can't, you just get used to it after a while. They call you enough names, so what?
I think social media has just so completely changed so much of our lives. And we haven't come to terms with it yet. And what you were saying before about Jacinda Ardern and wanting to bring in like all these hate speech laws to control social media, like that's like the reactionary way to try and get a grip on social media, which is just out of control. But I don't see any way to really do that without it becoming really totalitarian.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we should walk away at some point. We should just walk away from social media.
Well, I've never been in it. I'm a Luddite, and I know that I'm a technological Luddite. My partner does the setting up so I can talk here, and I'm pretty lazy really, because she can do it, I let her do it. But because I don't do the social media, I can do something. I don't care what they call me because I never see it.
Yeah.
And I know everybody, I know you have to have it, like especially ones in businesses or that social contact. But if that's what they say the marketplace is now, I don't even want to go to the marketplace if it's like, it sounds absolutely awful. So it makes me freer to be able to say things and not be tempted and toning myself down.
Yeah.
And I know not everybody can do it, but I know that it's one stress I don't have to deal with, is social media.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Sabina, and speaking your mind.
I'm Marie.
Oh, shit, sorry. I'm so sorry. How embarrassing for me.
Oh, we look alike. It's all right.
Thank you, Marie, for coming on and sharing your thoughts. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Best of luck over there in New Zealand. You know, I think once you've broken through the media a little bit, I think it will become easier. We're in a similar situation with the media here as well, but bit by bit, we're getting a story here, a story there, and it'll happen.
Oh, that's encouraging. Well, thanks very much, Stassja and Ange. I really appreciate coming on here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marie.
I look forward to seeing more of your TERF Talk Down Under.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Cheers.
Bye. All right.
Cool.
How embarrassing.
Oh, that's all right. It's hard because there's a name on the screen.
The name said,
and so you're going to say that name. But Marie was spot on about, young girls being back in the closet. When I was just down at the local Woolies and there was a young girl with, the bleached hair, the baggy clothes and no chest. And there's a lot of pressure on these girls to be trans-identifying or non-binary or bisexual, but lesbian's a dirty word. Yeah. And, our mutual friend who comes out to all our TERF things really supports the pushback. But, she finds herself sitting in a room full of 40-something and 50-something women.
And she's in her 20s,
Yeah, she's early 20s, same age as my eldest daughter. And I'll be chatting away and then I think, geez, this poor kid, I wouldn't want to be sitting there with people my mum's age. But, she realises that to be herself at the moment and to be accepted for who she is and be open, then she's having to hang around with people that are outside her peer group because her own peer group doesn't accept her for who she is. Which is really freaking sad.
Yeah. Same for some young gay men and bisexuals. And Ollie, the Melbourne detransitioner that we've met, I don't think I mentioned it last week, but he did an interview with Holly Lawford-Smith.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, for the LGB Alliance Australia channel, and it was really good. He's very articulate, very insightful, and was able to sort of paint a picture of what goes on in a trans activist's mind and sort of set the scene a bit more for us. I thought it was really valuable. Yeah,
he gets a lot of grief from his former friends in the trans movement. They're really cruel to him. Yeah.
Commiserations to our followers from Ballarat. The Ballarat City Council voted last night to implement the LGBTIQA plus inclusion plan for it's a 4-year plan, 22 to 26. So this is basically the wish list of the Victorian Pride lobby, and the council has just said, yeah, let's do it.
And their advisor was someone we discussed a couple of episodes ago, young Sean, who was the ones that has links to Amy Chandler in the UK. So they didn't do any background checks on Sean. He just came in representing his Pride group. They didn't look into anything to do with him, and they took all their advice from him. So, the local paper up there and Ballarat Council have been informed that they are showing that they have little regard for safeguarding, for one. So yeah, it's quite despicable that they have taken this person's advice without looking into his background, and haven't consulted properly with the LGB community, because if they had, they would notice that a lot of that community is on Twitter arguing with Sean. So, you know, they should be paying more attention to that. And Sean is always dragging the entire acronym and speaking for the entire acronym as if the rights of lesbians and gays and bisexual people are the same rights as the trans, queer, and God knows what else heterosexual people. He deliberately hides behind the lesbians and the gays. And then anyone who doesn't agree with what he's proposed, he accuses of not supporting lesbians and gay people.
Well, he was saying that there were some women went out the night before the council vote and did a bit of chalking and put some signage up and took some photos and shared it on Twitter. And I know for a fact that some of them are lesbian women, and there's Sean Malarkey on Twitter saying that they're homophobic. It's like, they're lesbians, you dickhead.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Women haven't got the right to have single sex spaces, according to Sean, and that's what basically Ballarat Council has put into their legislation.
Yeah. Good news today, Rowing Australia is reviewing its transgender policy, so that's good. And I would like to mention a really good article that Catherine Deves did for The Spectator. I didn't get to talk about it last week, but she talks about the Sex Discrimination Act, its relationship to the CEDAW. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but that's the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. I think that's right. Now, CEDAW is a UN treaty, I believe, or a convention that Australia signed out onto back in the early 80s. In order to put it into law, they created the Sex Discrimination Act. So Kath's arguing in this piece that because CEDAW underpins the Sex Discrimination Act, the amendments made to the Sex Discrimination Act that have obliterated sex-based protections are probably unconstitutional.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
If anyone knows any constitutional lawyers that would like to take this on, please get in touch.
Yeah.
There's
IWD Brisbane is having an event this weekend.
Yes, get in touch. I will link in the description. Get out on the streets, spread the word.
Yeah, a protest followed by a lunch, and these are always well attended. Men are welcome to attend these events. They're trying to push self-ID through in Queensland, so the more people that turn up, the better. So yeah, it'd be really good if you could attend that.
Yep. All right, I think that's everything for today.
Goodness knows what next week will bring us. Hopefully some good news.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Please like, share, comment, subscribe if you haven't already.
We only need, I think it's 80 more subscribers to have 2,000. So if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe and get your friends to subscribe, because it'd be great if we got up to 2,000.
That's it. All right. Thanks everyone. Have a great weekend. See you next week. Bye.